everyone. Thanks for watching today. My name is Autumn Sullivan. I'm the Marketing Manager for Mobilization Funding. Today with me, as always, is Scott Pieper, the CEO of Mobilization Funding. Thanks for joining me, Scott.
You're very welcome. Hey, Autumn. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Today, I would love if you could share with our audience how we're different from most other lenders in our space.
Of course. I actually spend the majority of my day talking to customers about that exactly. You know, I think maybe the easiest way for me to do this is just share one of our customer experiences and stories, the way they came to us and how we ultimately first presented to them. So in this particular case, a customer was referred by a friend of theirs who happened to be a previous client of ours. They're a roofing contractor in Texas. They had a great contract that they had bid with the VA Medical Center. Their job was going to be to essentially replace or redo a great majority of that roof. It was a much larger contract than they normally had. They didn't have all of the working capital they needed to execute on that contract, and they also didn't have a bond in place. So they happened to be talking to their friend who was a customer of Mobilization Funding, and they said, hey, you should really call Scott or the gals over at Mobilization Funding and see how they might be able to help you. We got on a quick phone call. I understood where they were coming from. We've worked with roofing and multiple trades, bigger trades like that before. We've worked through the VA government before, and we worked with the federal, state governments, as well as other private contractors. So we understood exactly what the scope was and definitely knew the problems and understood them. The first thing I would say that differentiated us immediately is that we understand those things. A lot of lenders, they either don't understand construction, don't want to understand construction, or both. And so that's very frustrating for a customer. So I think just the mere fact that we understand construction really well is a big differentiator. So on to the rest of that story with them. And ultimately, I'll tell you the outcome, but here's the journey they took. So we initially set up a quick phone call after being introduced on email. They walked us through the job, what they needed, what the problems were. And I could tell as I listened to them that they were really nervous, frustrated, all combination of it. Where am I going to figure this out from? So after realizing they needed a bond, we immediately connected them to one of the 2, 3, 4 bonding companies that we work with that we knew could get them a good bond for the type of work they had, which they weren't able to get before. Not only were they able to get bonded, but get bonded quickly, and they had never been bonded before. We were able to then work a financing package with them that understood exactly what they needed, which was money at the beginning of the job before they got to an invoice. And so we built an entire cash flow model out with them that showed what they were going to be working on week by week. Actually, they built the model. We just gave them a tool of what their costs and expenses were. What this did was it allowed us the ability to actually see exactly what their needs were and where their needs were going to be, whether it was in the very beginning of the job, whether it was for labor, whether it was for materials, what the situation was. We built the cash flow model and put in the differences between where the shortcomings were for cash. We were able to determine a loan amount, which was underneath our thresholds. We typically lend up to 20 to maybe 25% on the very high end. This was a case where they only needed to borrow up to 15%. We were able to put it in place for them, show them exactly what the cost structure of the loan was going to be, not only in percentages of the actual contract amount and interest, but also as a percent of the job, and exactly what the repayment schedule looked like based off their performance schedule. So, after the initial call, it gave them some comfort to know that we actually understood. But after we went through the initial documentation and work to figure out the project and build this cash flow model, that customer now became energized to get on the job. They said to me things like, we've never had multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to start a project before. I've never been able to put the amount of labor that I want on the beginning of the job and not worry about making payroll. We've never been able to go to our suppliers and negotiate better pricing because we had the cash up front if we wanted to make large deposits or pay for it. Things like that just weren't part of their normal day or their normal process in analyzing a job. So that's the stuff that our cash flow loans can work for them. Then on top of that, they were able to execute much faster throughout the job, month by month, to do more of the work up front, to bill faster, which meant they could perform much better for their customer. And it worked out really well. And essentially, so our process after that initial phone call is an initial set of documentation for application, where we take in their information, we approve that business as a whole. What they like to do is it the right scope of work. Then we approve the project. We build the cash flow model. We hand that back to them, show them exactly what they need based on their information, show them how we can help and what the exact cost is. And then they get to decide whether they want to move forward or not. No cost, no fees to figure that out. At that point, it works. They take the loan out, we close with the loan documentation, and we can execute from there.
Thanks, Scott. That was a good walkthrough. That was like a story and a process. So one of the things that I know customers ask a lot about is the funds directive that comes toward the end of our process. Would you mind explaining that a little bit?
Sure. I think the funds directive really is part of two things that are key to our loan. So when customers originally come to us, one of the things that they're usually frustrated about is they've worked with banks, other lenders, and never are they able to use their contract as collateral or their purchase order. They have this great purchase order or this great contract, and it's a great revenue opportunity for them, but no lenders want to give them any credit that they have that work. They want credit in the form of, well, how much money do you have in the bank? What property do you have that I can leverage? What other receivables do you already have that you've invoiced that I can utilize? Never do they say, oh, this future contract that I can execute on, I want to be able to use, and I'll use that as collateral. So I think that first part is important to understand, because that's what we're going to use as your form of repayment on our loan. That's what we're really looking to make sure that if you perform and we help you with the cash you need, that we can get repaid on that project. So why do I bring that up? Well, in order to be able to use that contract as collateral so that you can have the loan you need and the dollar amount that you need, which is typically a pretty large number, it's 50,000, 100,000, could be a few $100,000 depending on your contract size. Typically 20% of a contract is what we'll lend against, as I had said before. So in order to use that contract as collateral, two main things have to happen in order for us to be able to effectively meet the requirements that we've laid out for ourselves, but also the lenders that have given us money or the banks that we worked with to be able to make these loans. And the first thing is any money that we lend needs to go on the project, meaning it needs to be used for project related costs. So you can use it for payroll, you can use it for equipment, materials, other job related costs, insurance, bond premiums, or maybe other miscellaneous items that are part of the job, but maybe not part of the job, but we know about them in advance. The second thing that's important is when you're paid on that contract, we need to be repaid on that contract. It doesn't mean we're repaid all at once in the first pay application. We can be paid out over the course of the contract, but the funds that you're paid need to come to us in a controlled manner where we are able to deposit those funds into a disbursement account that we create for you. And what that does is that those two key pieces, that funds directive, where when you're paid, it comes to us and deposited into an account that's in your business's name and your tax ID number. So when we make these loans, the first thing we do is we approve the loan and we open up a disbursement account for our customer. And it's in our customer's name and their tax ID. And that's important because we want to make sure that they're able to collect revenue in their entity name. And we also want to make sure that they are able to pay their customers in their entity name, not mobilization funding. So the loan proceeds go into that account. They can then use those funds through our disbursement process, whether they go right into our online portal or whether they actually call in directly or use our paper format. And then when they invoice their customer at the end of the month, that pay application or invoice, those proceeds they're paid, we use before the loan is closed what's called a funds directive. And that funds directive is just a little half-page agreement between us, our customer, and their customer, usually the general contractor, the owner developer, the state or federal government. We've worked with almost every state and federal government, different cities all across the country, and hundreds of general contractors, large and small. So what we do is that agreement basically says, we've made a loan to the roofing company in my example from before. The roofing company, you have a contract with the VA Medical Center. Mobilization Funding is making a loan as a financier to help your contractor that you've made the loan with. When they invoice you and you agree to pay them per the terms of your contract, they're just agreeing to mail those funds to this specific address so that we can deposit it into the customer's account. And that's all they're agreeing to. So the general contractor or the customer is just agreeing that when they do pay per their contract with their customer, who's our customer as well, that they'll mail the check to us, and then we're going to deposit in that account, and we're going to make sure that the funds that went to the job stay on the job, and that anything that we've already paid for, we can pay back. And more importantly, that the customer has the money they need to continue to execute on the job and perform the job that they were hired to do.
Thanks, Scott. That makes it sound really nice and simple. Thank you. Because I know sometimes there's some anxiety around that particular conversation.
Yeah, it's funny. There is anxiety around it. And usually the notion is from our customers, they feel like oh, you know what? If it's going to make me look weak if I have a finance partner, if I go to my general contractor and I say that I don't have enough money for the job, they're not going to want to give me any work. It's going to make me look bad. And I always think, to myself, it makes perfect sense. And it's no different for myself. Sometimes you have insecurities about what people might think. But here's the real hard reality. Everybody in construction knows that subcontractors don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars to start every project. If they did, then there would be way less problems on a job site. So what everyone does know is that there are cash flow problems, and they're not necessarily the subcontractor's fault. They're because of the cash flow cycle of the job itself and the project in construction. Everybody, including the general contractor, has to do their work first before the owner or the developer or the owner or developer's financing company, bank, will give them any money. And so because of that, it trickles downhill. And the subcontractor, who's the first person on the job, they have to do the work, incur all the costs, put their invoice in. Then the general contractor puts their invoice in, and then everybody waits to get paid. So you're not weak by having a finance company. Matter of fact, you're stronger by having a finance company. What's weak is when you try to hide it or pretend it doesn't exist or pretend that you have all the cash in the world when you really don't. What's more important is to just say, look, I have a finance company. Of course I do. The the developer and the project itself, they have a finance company. They're not paying for this all in cash. And there's certain requirements and steps to make sure that everybody's executes on the job, including the owner developer. The general contractor, by the way, they have a financing company too. And if they don't have a financing company, then what they're doing is financing their contract with the owner developer with you guys, the subcontractor. And that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. But
Right.
pretending that those items don't exist and then blaming yourself and thinking you're weak is the wrong mentality to have.
And if you want to learn more about that, Scott has an entire video dedicated to introducing your financial partner to your GC, and I'll make sure that that is queued up for your next video after this one.
I'm passionate about that part because it's too often I see people hurt and struggling or upset about items that they really shouldn't be. It's just reality, and talking about reality there's nothing wrong with that. It actually makes you stronger. A lot of our customers are sent to us by general contractors. And the reason they do that is they want to make sure their sub has the ability to perform the job they gave them. And they know that the biggest determining factor in whether or not they can perform on the job is whether or not they have the cash to perform.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you said that last bit, because there were two things that I heard that I think, bringing us back to what makes us different. There are two things that you just said that I think make us different throughout the process, from first contact all the way through to last payment of the loan and your second loan. And those are passion and communication. So if you don't mind, in our last few minutes, could you talk a little bit about what it's like being a customer of us after the loan is funded, and what that day-to-day or week-to-week interaction is like?
Yes. What we set out to do for the customer here, our goal, our passion, is to make sure these customers of ours have an experience here with mobilization funding that not only solves their problem and their need, but also is enjoyable. Look, we're making loans in a place in construction or other places in purchase order financing or manufacturing that are tough to finance. And with that comes some constraints, things you have to work around. Maybe it's the funds directive and an uncomfortable conversation that you feel like you might need to have with your general contractor. Because of that, and because of the nature of a business relationship we have, we want to make sure our customer has a great time working with us, that we add value, that we can show them that their job is profitable. Here's exactly how it's going to cash flow. Here's what you can expect. We want to share our expertise. We want to help them with our relationships, whether it's getting bonded or getting a bond, like the customer I started off telling you about, or if it's just helping them execute through the job by giving them the cash they need. Along the way, we want to make sure that whole experience for them adds a lot of value in the middle of what otherwise is a pretty stressful time for contractors starting jobs. It's exciting, but it's also very stressful. And so if we can relieve that stress and give them a better experience where they can focus on their job, on the performance of it, without the stress of cash, and we can do it in a fun, meaningful, beneficial way that adds value to them and shows them what they're working hard for and exactly how much money they can make at the end and how much money they have month to month, or when the job is going to be positive cash flow, we're paid back and you can finish on your own. You don't have to worry about what struggles you might have towards the end of the job. Those additional points of value are really important. And then secondly, what I would say is our goal is to treat each of our customers in a way that they're buying a Cadillac product, like the way you'd hope to feel if you were buying the highest brand company. We want you to feel that way. Now, you might not always feel that way. There might be problems or strains along the way. We do our best, but that's our goal. That's what we try to do the best.
So how is that customer doing now? The roofing example that you started with.
Great. So a couple months ago, they finished the job. They actually were able to do the job in a month and a half faster than they thought they would have been, which saved them 6 weeks of budgeted labor that they had built into the job. And any of you that are listening to this message now, you know that how much 6 weeks of labor can cost. And if you could get on the job and finish 6 weeks sooner because you had the money you needed up front, you're able to get the materials on time, there weren't any delays. Now, of course, was that all because they had the right amount of money? No. A few of those weeks were probably because they had perfect weather and they had a good job site and it worked well. But nonetheless, they budgeted 6 weeks of extra labor cost into that job. And that's 6 weeks of savings, 6 weeks of margin. That was more than quadruple the cost of the loan just in savings alone. Secondarily, they were able to get bonded, which meant they could do the job. That came directly from a contact that we had with them. And they overall had a great experience. Customer told me that they've never worked on a job with that much labor before. And they've also never worked on a job where they didn't have the stress week to week of making those labor payments and buying the material and supplies. So again, I always tell our internal team here, we're in the business of making loans, but we're really in the business of removing stress and anxiety in a construction job too, because of the loan we make. And if we can help people and they can have 1 week of savings of labor, that is a huge amount of profit that they can put in their pockets. And executing on the job in the absence of stress is something that most customers have not been able to do before. And when we're able to deliver that for them, that's really, or be a part of delivering that for them, that's really important to us. So that customer got the job finished, they got bonded, they saved and made way more money than they thought they were going to make. And now they're on to their next job. And you know what? The job they thought they were going to need us for the second time around, they didn't, because they saved enough money on that first job that they actually didn't need to borrow from us again. They have a much bigger job coming out now. And what they learned is they could bid that extra work, those bigger jobs. They could do an extra job or two that they might not have otherwise did before because they know they have the financing help and they also have the bonding help. And so we're getting ready to analyze a new project for them soon, and it's supposed to start here. If we didn't have the coronavirus, it probably would have already started. But we're getting ready to move forward with them again, and they finished out great.
That's awesome. Thank you, Scott. So if any of you are watching this and you would like to have more information or you're ready to apply, you can do that on our website. It's super easy. It's mobilizationfunding.com. It will be at the end of this video as well, or you can call. Scott, do you have the number on hand for us?
Sure. The number is 1-866-44-APPLY.
Thanks so much, Scott. And thank you everyone for watching. Have a great day.